we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
This is Multipolarity, charting the rise of the new multipolar world order.
Coming up this week,
remember Olaf Scholz? Just about? Remember when he sunk to the lowest opinion poll rating in German political history? Well, the good news for anonymous, hopeless former chancellors is that the next beige technocrat in charge of Germany has just beaten his record, plunging to 89% dissatisfied, with only 11% satisfied. Even with Macron as the most unpopular French president ever, and Keir Starmer as the least popular Prime Minister of Britain ever, Merz is more unpopular still. So our lead question this week is very simple. What the flaming fuck is going on in Germany?
Meanwhile, more news just in on Europe's cordless bungee ride. UK bond yields have spiked again to 5.3%, the highest rate since 1998. They can't go any higher, right? In the 4 years since the Truss contagion blew up the markets by hitting 5% and toppled the government, it's a good thing the UK Treasury used that period to stop running massive deficits, right?
Finally, the global oil market is beginning to resemble Argentina under Kirchner. You've got your official oil prices, and then you've got your real prices. As reality continues to diverge from the markets, we're asking, who is this mysterious whale of Hormuz who keeps fiddling with the international pricing mechanism?
Of course, this being a pay week, you'll need to sign up on Patreon or Substack if you want to hear that bit. Only the real heads get to dine on the whole hog.
But first,
Merz, Sadist, Benz. So this week, some new data's out on satisfaction with the German government under the Chancellor Merz, or the Merz bot, as I like to call him. He's a little robotic. He's had a bad couple of weeks, but I don't think you can really attribute the absolutely awful poll numbers to his recent shenanigans of alienating the Americans and so on. I don't think they're actually the headline. The real headline is that the German government's been a complete disaster since he took over. Partly his fault, but partly not. The relevant data point is that a survey asked, are you satisfied with the work of the federal German government so far? And only 11% said yes, and 87% said no. The last survey had been taken in July of last year, so not even quite a year ago, maybe 10 months ago. And the yes, I'm satisfied number had fallen by 27 points. So that's fallen from 38% to 11%. So that's kind of a total wipeout. That's a total wipeout of satisfaction with the government. That's a government that's actually kind of, on the brink, as it were. And I think what's interesting about this, I mean, we could go on about, how bad the CDU government's been this time around. That's kind of mainstream news now. Everyone's kind of attacking Merz. He obviously made that gaffe that I mentioned with the Americans, if it was a gaffe. I'm not sure what it was. He made, some sort of a diplomatic spat with the Americans over basically nothing. The Americans pulled 5,000 troops, or announced that they were pulling 5,000 troops out of Germany, NATO troops, which has caused some consternation in Germany. But that's not really the interesting point here. The fact of the matter is that as unlikable as Merz is, and as bad a politician as he is, and all the things that'll be coming out in the next few weeks and people will be telling you, which was obvious to my mind the moment he became chancellor, is kind of secondary. The real issue here is structural. The people in Germany aren't happy with the German government because it's not governing on their behalf anymore. It's governing on behalf of the European Commission, in fact, the European Commission cabal, you might call it, the von der Leyen cabal, whatever you want to call it. That's basically where this is coming from. And they're governing on behalf of basically the war in Ukraine and the interests of the European Commission and, a rapid federalization program, the kind of things that we talk about on the show all the time. And what that's done, obviously, is driven Germany into complete economic stagnation at best. I mean, I think living standards are probably falling. The inflation numbers may not tell you that, but you kind of get the sense that they are. And that's all over Europe. It's not just in Germany. But Germans are particularly sensitive to that because they've really based their their national identity around economic prosperity. Well, first of all, kind of engineering competence for a very long time. And then in the last, certainly quarter century, they've been basing it around the fact that they're the most successful economy in Europe and the heart of the European economy. The reason that this is so interesting is that this survey is basically, it was taken quite recently. It was taken in, it was released pretty much today, 5th of May, but I'm guessing it was taken a week or two ago. And the Germans have seen, as we all have in Europe, rising gas prices, as the Americans call it, rising fuel prices. We've started to see that already. But I don't think it's at the stage yet where it's kind of gone into the public psyche fully, basically. And we certainly haven't seen the inflationary consequences. So what's very interesting about this survey is that a survey like this, which basically shows a complete collapse in trust for the German government, and I mean the German government, it wasn't just about Merz, is coming out before we're seeing an enormous shock to European living standards. And we'll talk about that more shortly, although we talk about it on the show all the time and have been for the past few weeks. The collapse in living standards is going to be profound, and it's going to be much worse than the fall in living standards that we saw after 2022, which have driven the dissatisfaction so far. This is the fall in living standards that's been a result of the pandemic and the war and the cutting off of cheap Russian natural gas, basically the deindustrialization, inflation, etc., that we've been talking about since we started the show. That's bad, but it's not as bad as what's coming. What's coming is going to be substantially worse. It's going to be fuel shortages, potentially food shortages, and so on. And the living standard collapse in Europe is going to be much more profound. And I think what this survey is telling us is that that absolute collapse in living standards is about to take place is about to take place at the very time when governments like the German government, and I think this generalizes across Europe, maybe there's a couple of popular governments in Europe I'm not aware of, but in my opinion, pretty much all of Europeans fall like this, see things this way, that the collapse in living standards is going to happen against the backdrop of not just dissatisfaction with government. Dissatisfaction for government might be like 35% agree that the government's doing well. No, 11% agree that the government's doing well. Basically nobody. Basically like members of the CDU agree or something like that. If you bring a collapse in living standards on the back of that kind of dissatisfaction with the government, you're looking at incredibly explosive situation in Europe. And I think we're really going to a point of a complete political destabilization in Europe over the next 4 to 6 months, I think.
Look, when Friedrich Merz was elected in May of last year, you and I, Philip, sat down and said that nothing would actually change in Germany. The same dissatisfactions which had driven the SPD out of power, the Social Democratic Party of Germany out of power, would remain as underlying forces because the Christian Democrats, led by Merz, had no solution to them whatsoever. The changes that Merz would bring in were in accent rather than substance. And it's transpired exactly like that. Look, there are some very specific things about Merz that makes him particularly unpopular. For instance, the way he's dealt with Trump, he's swung from really painful to watch obsequiousness, capitulating entirely, in Scotland at Turnberry on the trade deal that they agreed, and really being very just uncomfortable in his obsequiousness around Trump in general. He swung from that to saying that Iran has humiliated America and that Trump entered a war without any strategy whatsoever. Now, that may well be true, but you don't swing from that kind of bootlicking, supine, lackey position to one of gadfly and polemicist, do you? It's like the swing is indicative of somebody who is cack-handed, who is not sure-footed around diplomatic issues such as this. He both failed to defend German interests in dealing with Trump, and then managed to infuriate Trump, because the swing from the bootlicking and supine obsequiousness to this kind of insulting loss of patience with Trump has led to Trump. Hello there, Andy Collingwood here to say that you have reached the paywall. A paywall is like a real wall, except it's you buying access to our premium content. We do 3 free shows every month. Then, to keep the lights on, we ask our fans to pay for the 4th. It's $8 on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com, enter a few quick details, pay the currency units, get the episode, become part of secret Multipolarity. But these days, you can also sign up on Substack. There, you get the premium podcast, plus any written work that we add to Substack. We have big plans for that, so for an extra $4, taking it to $12 a month, you get the whole shebang. The choice is yours. Of course, if you're already a member of the club, the show continues just beyond this point. If not, for now, goodbye. The SPD are the junior partner within the coalition in Germany, and he's just being consistently outmaneuvered by them, and it kind of keeps